About 2.5 years ago, I was sitting inside of a grain bin, and I had an idea on how we could clean out grain bins without farmers having to climb inside of them. Essentially, this convoluted idea involved some series of nets, winches, and pulleys, a lot of electrical work, and also a lot of idealistic preconceived notions that this was going to work really, really well. Since then, I actually made the prototype. Last fall, I tested it in a 30-foot grain bin. And in this video, I want to talk about what went right, what went wrong, what I wish I would have done differently, and maybe some advice for entrepreneurs who are looking to take that crazy idea of their own and build it into something real. To explain this innovation a little better, what it is, it's a series of nets that line the inside of the grain bin, and what it does is it lifts the corn up and rolls it into the center sump without the farmer having to enter into the grain bin. So you can clean out your grain bin, in theory, with the press of a button. To make a long story short, we ran some tests this past fall. It did not go well. It could have gone way better. We're gonna make some changes this spring in hopes that the electrical system can support the infrastructure a little better. When it came to fundraising, I did 3 things, and I think all 3 of those were the correct things to do. That being investments from friends and family, a loan from the state of Iowa, the Economic Development Authority, and then finally pitch competitions. When it came to investments from friends and family, I had 4 investors who I am forever grateful for and made it possible to begin with. I procured these investments through something called a SAFE agreement. And the SAFE agreement is not only entrepreneur friendly, but it's also investor friendly. To put it in layman's terms, we punted the equity down the field. So off the bat, that sounds very investor unfriendly, but I promise you it's not. Because a lot of guys, when they are getting that initial investment from a friend or a family, they might just say, well, I think this is worth like 0.5% of my company, you know. $2,000 in the grand scheme of things is not worth a lot, and this is the return that it hypothetically could have, so you can have half a percent of my company. When in reality, maybe that $2,000 investment was worth 4% or 3%, which is a lot. What a SAFE agreement does is it says, let's wait until the first evaluation of the company. You'll pay someone to evaluate exactly how much your company is worth, and then you can measure that up next to that initial investment and get a more accurate equity through, and I mean, it can be settled through there. This is just a lot easier for myself and for the investors who invested in me. It's also, you know, you could just right off the bat say, oh, wow, you gave me a lot of money, here's 10% of my company. Well, that can be very tricky going forward when negotiating deals with future investors. You know, if you have friends and family who own large sums of the company, it might make it harder for you to get future investment. So this was easily the best way to go starting off, and something I did right. Another thing I did right was the POCR loan through the Iowa Economic Development Authority. This gave me $50,000 in funding. It couldn't have happened without this. I was able to completely fundraise all engineering with the initial prototype, and it's a very entrepreneur-friendly setup. So the loan is paid off through royalties, so you have to be a full revenue company to be paying it back. All of these things were helpful to me, so I wasn't stressing out about like monthly loan payments. And then finally, if you are a aspiring entrepreneur, this is the best way that you can make money right off the bat and not fork up, you know, part of your company and be like beholden to investors, is through pitch competitions. And I cannot stress enough how important and how beneficial pitch competitions are. essentially there's a lot of galas, expos, events, or 3-day entrepreneurial events that guys like you and me can go to and listen to keynote speakers and listen to, panelists and stuff like that. But the one big event, or the one big draw for a lot of these things, are the pitch competitions. And you apply for them months in advance, you get selected to compete, and then you get a prize at the end if you place. And I won a lot of these. Not to toot my own horn, but I'm very good at delivering a pitch. I won nearly $12,000 just off of pitch competitions. And for a large product like mine, it's obviously going to take a lot more money to prototype and fundraise for engineering. But right off the bat, it was the difference maker. So those are the 3 ways of fundraising money that I did right. A lot of what I did wrong came after, and it's how I spent the money.
So now that I laid out what went right and what I did correctly to raise money, I'd like to talk a little bit about what went wrong and how I spent that money. And this is, without a shadow of a doubt, the most important part of being an entrepreneur. You need to be very mindful of how you spend that money and realize that it's not just an open line of credit. You don't have an unlimited resource of funds to put towards your project. You need to be very tactful and very pragmatic with how you spend it. So to start off, I made a lot of promises that the prototype was going to be done on this month or this day. Mark it in your calendar and be ready to go for when the prototype is going to be put together and we're going to test it. And that was not smart, especially this early in the game. Don't make promises like that. Have goals, but don't make promises and tell people that it's going to be ready by then. What this led to was a lot of frustration. A lot of materials and supplies were not delivered at the right time, and unfortunately, I only just continue to frustrate myself and the people who I was working with to deliver results. So when you're that early and you are developing, let's say, a new phone camera or whatever big idea you got, don't give yourself hard deadlines. That's for later on in the game. And even when you're a fully established and sophisticated manufacturing company, those hard deadlines are often not met. So don't hold those expectations for yourself. Secondly, I'd like to talk maybe a little bit more about the culture surrounding entrepreneurialism. And it's really unfortunate, the reality of the culture of entrepreneurialism, because being an entrepreneur is supposed to be more like a philosophy or a lifestyle, and more of like a way of thinking. And it's kind of been turned into an industry. So there's a lot of services and products that are sold to give you the illusion or idea that you're living this lifestyle. You're the next Bill Gates or the next Steve Jobs, and like I mentioned earlier, a lot of these conventions and galas or 3-day entrepreneurial events are kind of coupled with these people on the fringe that want to convince you that you are one step away from making it big. And if you buy their program, their coaching services, or their consultation, you're going to be the next big thing. Do not listen to that. I need everybody who's trying to be an entrepreneur to remember that they've got one job and one job only, and it's to bring whatever big idea that they have to market. It's not to feel really cool in a suit for a weekend, or feel self-aggrandized and important to other people. With that being said, though, I met a lot of, I don't want to call them consultants, but business partners who, including my business advisor and my engineer, who engineered my prototype. I met a lot of people in law and legal services that were very helpful to me. I had a lot of mentors that were incredibly helpful. You can't do this on your own at all. You need help, but also be very, very conscious about who you're giving your money to. And You know when someone is trying to swindle you or not. Sometimes you don't, but most times you get a feeling in your stomach. So don't waste all your money on that, on trying to get sold this pie in the sky ideal. You know, you're just one step away if you buy my services. Another thing, another piece of advice, you don't need the patent. Stop thinking about it. Like, you don't need it now. If you are just developing a product and you are getting convinced that you need to file for a patent, that's not good advice that you're getting. What you need to do is prove that the product works. Prove that you have an actual marketable, scalable product before you even think about getting the provisional or non-provisional patent. I'm still paying lawyer fees for a patent that isn't even filed. And that's not the attorneys or the law firm's fault. That's my fault. So don't worry about a big company swooping in and stealing your project or your idea. That happens when you start taking up market share. Worry about making the product work and actually having a deliverable to the consumer, and then start thinking about a patent. But even if a big company swooped in and took your idea and you had a patent filed, you don't have enough money to hire enough attorneys to defend yourself in the first place. So yeah, that's maybe a rough analysis of what went wrong. But at the end of the day, it's not all doom and gloom either. So I spent a lot of this video telling you about this test that went wrong this fall. And yes, on the surface, it was very frustrating and very difficult. It didn't work out exactly the way that I wanted it to. But that's the nature of being an entrepreneur. You have to fail a lot to get to where you want to be. We actually got a brand new test lined up for this spring with an updated electrical system. So who knows, maybe this next test, we're gonna have a breakthrough. We're gonna have a light at the end of the tunnel. And that's how this works. Yeah, we're testing again this spring. I'm not gonna give a date or a month because who knows when it happens. It may even be this summer, but we're gonna test it again. And to all of my investors, to all the people who have followed me along for this journey, I'm gonna see this idea to its conclusion. And I'm also expanding what I'm doing as an entrepreneur. So it's been incredibly exciting to maybe test out some new ideas and see what my company can be investing in aside from just this one idea of cleaning out grain bins. I'm diversifying my portfolio. That includes shrimp farming, oddly enough, which I'd like to show you guys soon. I'll show a couple pictures in this video. I also have started a newsletter with that said business advisor that I told you guys about earlier in the video. We just hit 3,000 subscribers this past week and are starting a monetization strategy, which is exciting. And also, I am currently developing an app for farmers who want to track weather and precipitation amounts on their phone. So I'm doing all sorts of different things. Life has been crazy and it's not all one monolithic idea. I'm branching out. And if it wasn't for all the times that I failed or fell short in my initial attempt of being an entrepreneur, I wouldn't have learned all the hard lessons that are hopefully going to serve me very, very well going on in the future. So yeah, here's my video. This is my advice. Take it how you will and expect to see a lot more of me in the future as I hope to sort of document what it's like to be an entrepreneur and what I've been learning and the advice that I can maybe give to you guys. So thank you.